Greetings, travelers. I'm your host, the C.That Knows a Lot, Dr. Waluigi. When it comes to the horror genre, there have been many who are considered the masters of the craft. These masters have gone on to make some of the most nightmare-inducing movies in the world, which have continued to scare audiences even today. And in the late 2000s, we got a project where all these masters came together to make their own individual hour-long episodes that do vary in quality. And we'll be taking a look at the first episode today that was directed by the creator of Phantasm himself, Don Coscarelli. This is my first review of the first episode of the Masters of Horror TV series with Incident on and Off a Mountain Road. The series started with director Mick Garris bringing up the project to some of his friends at a party. Eventually, he and several more directors ended up coming together to make their own individual movies in this anthology TV series. The first episode did incredibly well that it ran for 2 seasons before it was eventually cancelled in 2007. However, the show did get a sort of revival with its 3rd season, though the show's title was changed to Fear Itself and was released on NBC instead of Showtime. The show received several awards over the years and has gained a cult following, with many of the episodes being released as individual movies, as well as a complete DVD series. As I previously mentioned, this episode was directed by Don Coscarelli and is based off of the short story that was written by Joe R. Lansdale. The episode was popular enough that it ended up getting adapted as a comic book that extends the story for those interested in seeing a longer version of the movie. But I may be curious enough to check it out sometime, depending on the price it goes for. The movie follows a young woman who's driving on an abandoned road after leaving her husband as his survivalist life was just too stressful for her. However, she ends up coming across an abandoned car on the road and starts getting chased by a crazed albino man. Can she survive the onslaught of this crazed madman? And what horrors await her on and off this mountain road? Even for such a small cast, I do find the performances to be hit or miss in this movie. The main girl, Ellen, played by Bree Summer, I think is just okay in the role that she was given. She does fit the quota for a strong survivalist woman that can hold her own against this movie's slasher villain Moonface, played by Joe DeSantis. Though I do feel like we don't really get to know her that well in this movie, as most of her character moments come from the flashbacks she gets when she was with her ex-husband Bruce, played by Ethan Embry, who is just there to show how Ellen learned all the survival skills as she takes on Moonface. The only other actor that stands out is the one captive that Moonface keeps alive, and the only reason I bring him up is because he's played by the original tall man himself, the late Angus Scrimm. And even then, he's just there to be the crazy old man that ends up dying at the end of the movie. I think that the movie has 2 main positives: the cinematography and the set designs. For a series like this that was made in the late 2000s, I do think that the first movie does show, at least for now, what each master brings to the table. In the case of this movie, it's Don Coscarelli's amazing use of cinematography and the well-made sets. I've always loved the backwoods slasher subgenre, and this one uses that setting to its advantage. I like that this episode takes place at night, with the only light available coming from the headlamps of the cars or the moon. I rarely see other slasher movies use this setting this well, including a lot of backwoods slasher movies I like, where the directors have these movies take place at a campsite, so there is a lot of light surrounding the forest. Which brings me to the other part of this movie that I liked about the design, specifically the design of Moonface's cabin, as it's the best location and set in this movie. The design of his cabin on the outside shows his many victims being crucified with their eyes drilled out so that we see the moon coming through their eyes. It's really creepy and haunting, like they're his own personal scarecrows keeping watch over his home when he goes out to hunt for his next victim. The inside of the cabin is creepy too, but I just like the outside of his house more, as the inside is very generic looking and at times hard to see because of how dark it is. While I like a lot of the ideas in this movie, I do think that the biggest weakness is that the movie is too short. Which does affect the characters, as like I mentioned before, they aren't that interesting because we don't get to know the main characters, except through flashback, and that ends up making the movie very distracting and annoying when you're watching the events play out and then we get whiplashed into watching a flashback that shows why Ellen broke up with Bruce, as well as what he taught her in order to survive in the wild. I get that this was a TV series and that they probably didn't have the time to rewrite the movie, but if this had been a little bit longer, I think it would have made the movie stronger. The only other nitpick I have with the movie is that while I like the actor who plays Moonface, his design is a little lacking for a slasher villain. It just looks so generic, which is sad considering Don Coscarelli was able to make someone like Angus Scrimm as the tall man look and feel creepy with his writing and directing style. For the first movie of a 3-season anthology series, I do find that this movie is very lacking as to what made the series so memorable. I've only seen a few of the other movies for this series, and I can't say that those few movies blow this one out of the water. If they had a longer runtime and maybe edited some of the writing, I think that this could have been a really great movie. As is, it's just a very basic slasher movie with some minor writing issues. Overall, I give Incident on and Off a Mountain Road a 5 out of 10. There are way better slasher movies as well as better episodes from this series that I hope to tell you guys about in the coming years. But we'll just have to wait until the next movie. Thanks for watching, I'm Dr. Waluigi, and remember, don't judge a book by its cover, cause you'll never know what's inside. Good night, everyone.